Kia ora Year 13s, it's Ms McIntosh here. So I've been drawing on my whiteboard with my pen and having a bit of fun, and I thought I would just go through a quick explanation of production externalities, starting with a positive externality of production. This one I would say is probably a little bit tricky. A lot of students kind of struggle with this one a bit. So I'm going to use something that you might be familiar with, which is, I've called it the Jville Mall, but the Jville Mall redevelopment. So thinking about maybe why that hasn't gone ahead, and why possibly we might need like the city council or someone to step in to maybe help out with a bit of funding or something to make it happen. So let's just look at it as a situation stands, and I'll have to move this like screen around so you can see, and then you'll see the rest of my crazy diagram. All right, so what we have here is the Johnsonville Mall, just over here in this section here, if we just look here. All right, and this is kind of like the private market for urban redevelopment. We call it the Johnsonville Mall, upgrading that, and basically whoever the owners of the mall are, I forget who they are like thinking about like the cost to them, the marginal cost to them of rebuilding the mall and making it bigger and cooler and fancier, right? And like I guess the people who use the mall are thinking, maybe the retailers who are like they're thinking about like the benefits that they get from the mall being redeveloped, and like together they kind of like come together, and this would be like a price that they agree upon. But basically at the moment, like it's not really happening because they are kind of like, what it's kind of happening is that they'll only redevelop it to a certain point. So they're kind of like, oh, we can develop it to this much, sort of like they do a half job, and they don't do like a full job of redeveloping the mall and making it like really cool place that you would enjoy, because they feel that that's the only price that the consumers of the mall, or say the retailers, would pay, and that, you know, it's going to cost the private developers to produce it and make it happen. So basically what I would say is happening at the moment is that there is theoretically a price for redevelopment of the mall, but it's not going to be like a full job. It's only going to be like a half job, because these guys here, particularly the redevelopers, whoever owns that mall, are thinking that like it's really expensive to develop more, and it's just not going to, the price, you know, that they could charge for rent, so for example on the shops in the mall, would be too little compared to the cost of redeveloping the mall. So the key thing here is that this is a bit of a tricky one, I fully admit. They're only thinking about themselves. All right, they're only thinking about their costs, their profits, and like what it's worth to them. And I guess the people in the mall, like perhaps when we think about consumers, it's pretty much like the real losing my mind here a little bit, what do you call it, the shopping people, retail outlets, right? They're only thinking about, you know, what the rent they have to pay, and then, you know, like their business and stuff like that. What they're not thinking about, none of these guys, so these are the participants in the market, the redeveloper and like probably the retail outlets, that type of thing. They're only thinking about their private surplus, right? That's all they're thinking about. What they're not thinking about is you lot, the Johnsonville community, right? And when I say community, I've got like sort of like there's also a family sort of thing here, but think about like other businesses in the Johnsonville area. Like think about how they might benefit if the Johnsonville Mall was to be redeveloped. Think about the whole community, business, households, all of them, and how they would benefit from the mall being like fully redeveloped. I heard there's a movie theatre idea, and there's something like maybe a bowling alley could be quite cool. You know, I think like a really, really solid job, like one of those really fancy malls in like Auckland or like overseas or something like that. Imagine if we had a mall like that. It would be really epically awesome. And yeah, it would cost a heap to build, but that's because you're not thinking about, like, you're only thinking about your own profit. You're not thinking about the benefits to the community. So when we look at a positive externality of production, basically there are like proven spillover benefits to the wider community or society. Another example would be like having like a concert in like Westpac Stadium. Like the Wellington CBD would benefit from hosting it, even though they're not actually at the stadium, you know, like they're not actually involved in that concert at the stadium, but they would benefit from it. So it's a similar idea. And so what we do is we need to again put the spillover benefits into this model, and we need to take Johnsonville community, like society, into the equation. We need to put them in the model. So flick over here. I know this is really not very sophisticated. Oh, you didn't see my full model. Okay, let's just drag it down. See, I kind of went like this. So let's just flick over here. Let's think about this middle bit about the Johnsonville community, and let's redraw the model to to maybe kind of like think about them, think about what they want. And so hopefully what you can see here is, this is a bit weird. You might struggle a bit, because I know it's hard to teach, let alone, for students to understand. When we have a positive spillover benefits, what we actually do is we take it away from the marginal cost, the private marginal cost. And basically the idea is that when you think it's so expensive to redevelop the mall, but when you think about the wider benefits to society, actually the cost is way less. Yeah, like when society thinks about your private cost and it benefits to itself, the cost in terms of all the benefits from having the mall developed and the benefits to the community at a whole are much greater, and that kind of means that the initial cost, say, to redevelop it is much lower. All right, so you take away the spillover benefits and you end up with this lower marginal social cost curve. And I guess what you want to think about is that the amount of redevelopment we could get could be done at like a much lower cost. You kind of think about it like this. Remember, like increase in supply. So it's kind of saying you could actually have much more redevelopment, and it's not as expensive as you think, because you're just not thinking about all the benefits. You're not taking that all into account. So we redraw MSC, all right, it doesn't equal MC, so there you go, you've got an externality because they're not equal, all right. If there was no externality, they would be equal, right? I forgot to put it here, but for example, this MB, this actually equals MSB. There's nothing wrong with the consumption going on here, all right, but the issue is here, all right. These two aren't equal, and the reason is that there are spillover benefits between the two curves, right? And so what we want to do is we want to take that into account, and we want to think about, okay, how can we get to the social equilibrium? All right, remember, social equilibrium is where MSC equals MSB. So basically we're here, green dot, QMPM, private market price, private market quantity, and pretty much the key thing here is that society thinks that's too little. All right, it's undersupplied, underproduced in the private market. So what's your wording? It's not about consumption. It's underproduced, and society would actually prefer that more redevelopment of the mall or the Johnsonville area is done. We want more redevelopment at QS. So the key thing here is really about trying to achieve what we would call the socially optimal quantity, the quantity that's of more redevelopment, if you like, that society would like, and that's QS. Oh, I'm moving things around. Whoa, what's going on there? I don't know what happened. Okay, so looking at this, we want to get this. This is where MSC equals MSB. So that's a social equilibrium. Ah, the dot's gone. I don't know what happened. Let's go Control Z. There we go. Woohoo. That was weird. I've never seen it do that before. Okay, I'll be careful. So I think I've just touched it again. Sorry, guys. Okay, stay where you are. So we want this because this is where the social equilibrium is, and that delivers the quantity that society would like. All right, now the thing is with the price is that to get like the retail agents to consume that amount of redevelopment, to occupy the space and use it, we'd need to charge a price that would enable like consumption to meet that extra production, right? So that's why PS is below. Probably, if you kind of look at it, you're probably thinking, oh, but the problem is if you put the price down, then the redevelopers, the mall, will be like, nah, it's too low, I don't want to do that. So a common policy here might be to whack a subsidy on, you can kind of see it here, to try and pay the difference between like the social price that would enable like consumption to increase to match the increased production, and get the producers a price that will enable them to produce that much. But that's not so much important, because remember what I said, the key thing that we're looking for here is we want to increase the amount of redevelopment from the private quantity to the social quantity. All right, so a couple of key points. Why is this market failure? Well, go through it. MC doesn't equal MSC. As soon as you see that they're not equal, there's like two curves going on here, and then there's this thing in the middle. It's not equal because there's spillover benefits to society, the Johnsonville community, all right, and because they're not being included, so this is the key thing, because they're not included in MC, because MC doesn't equal MC plus or minus the spillover benefits or costs here, all right, we have a separate MSC curve, which is lower than MC. We'd want more, society would want more, all right, and so what we have a situation where it's underproduced at the private market, and it's kind of overpriced, yeah. I think the key thing is society would prefer more, and what you can see is that the private market, there is a deadweight loss. Why is there deadweight loss? Because this product, urban redevelopment, is underproduced, All right, society would prefer more. So since at the private market they don't produce the optimal quantity for society, you have a dead weight loss. So you could go like that. You could say there's a dead weight loss because at PMQM, MC doesn't equal MSC. The social equilibrium is further ahead at QS where MSB equals MSC. So it's just another thing you could say. Another thing to think about, and I'm not going to draw it because it'll get real messy, I'm not that good, is that at the PMQM, so about the private market equilibrium, here is your MSB, if you like. Here's the marginal social benefits, but here's the marginal social costs. And so we have a situation where they're not equal. So remember, social equilibrium is where they're equal, MSB equals MSC. Because they're not equal, what we want to do is we want to shift our production to the point where they are equal. So by increasing production of urban redevelopment, what will happen is that the marginal social cost will increase from this point, and the marginal social benefit will decrease until they are both equal. And remember, the idea is they're equal, they're optimized. You've got the greatest benefit society versus the lowest costs, if you like, and that will happen at QS. Because we're stuck at QM-PM without any intervention, these spillover benefits remain unaccounted for, not captured is another word, in the private market. So we have a dead weight loss of this really randomly sort of psychedelic coloured triangle here. Okay, so this is just a really quick run through of, to be honest, one of the hardest externalities, a positive externality of production. I hope you enjoy it. I'm going to do one for negative because I did another cool picture, and yeah, hopefully it will supplement your learning. Ka kite.